"You'll regret this tomorrow, Justin," she murmured, leaving the bank after being mocked and dismissed by a teller. The teller, in her simple attire, treated her no differently than any other customer, disrespected, disregarded, and belittled. But Justin was not just another customer. The following day, she returned, not as a visitor, but as the new boss. The employees who had laughed at her now faced the unexpected consequences of their actions. Respect isn't a privilege for a select few. It's a right for everyone, no matter if they're in jeans or a suit. It was a typical Monday morning at Jessica Branch Bank, an upscale institution nestled in the heart of the city. The polished marble floors shone beneath the fluorescent lights, and the air carried the scent of fresh coffee and expensive cologne. Employees in sharp suits moved quickly, serving clients who seemed to belong to the high finance world. Conversations were low but urgent, while the clicking of keyboards filled the air, marking the business being done at every counter. Amidst the sea of well-dressed professionals, Justin walked into the bank, an ordinary woman in a simple jacket, jeans, and sneakers. She carried no briefcase, no designer purse, nothing that would signal the power she held to the untrained eye. To the casual observer, she appeared to be just another visitor, perhaps a college student or someone with a routine transaction. But as soon as she stepped through the automatic glass doors, the atmosphere changed. Heads turned, not in respect, but because Justin's casual attire sharply contrasted with the immaculate uniforms of the employees around her. Whispers spread across the room, some obvious, others quietly exchanged behind cupped hands. A young woman at the front desk glanced at her coworkers, rolling her eyes in a dismissive, condescending way. One customer in the waiting area leaned toward a friend and muttered loud enough for Justin to hear, "I think she came to the wrong place." Unfazed by the stares and whispers, Justin walked past the gleaming counters with determination. She had been in countless rooms where people judged her based on her appearance, places where she didn't fit in, where others didn't see her potential. But none of that mattered now. What mattered was the future. He was about to change the course of things. For a brief moment, her mind hesitated, but she quickly refocused. This was her bank now. She had worked too hard to let the petty judgments of others interfere with her vision. With every step, her confidence grew. She knew she was more than capable of leading them, even if they hadn't realized it yet. As she approached the teller's counter, the young woman behind it, Sarah, glanced at her dismissively before greeting her with clear impatience. "Excuse me," Sarah said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Are you here to borrow money? I'm afraid we're out of cash today." Justin paused, her brow furrowing ever so slightly. She had expected to be underestimated, but the blatant disregard still caught her off guard. She raised an eyebrow but kept her cool exterior intact. "No, I'm not here to borrow money," Justin replied, her voice calm yet firm. She didn't need anything from this place in the usual sense. She had a different purpose, one that wasn't listed behind the counter. Sarah, glancing over Justin's shoulder at her colleagues, flashed a smug smile. "Well, maybe you're here for benefits. If that's the case, you'll have to wait outside until we're available." The comment was meant to be mocking, but Justin didn't react. She knew how to handle these moments. The entire institution was built on assumptions about appearance and status, and right now, Justin was showing them that their judgment was flawed. She was about to prove that appearances were the least of their concerns. The awkward tension hung in the air, but Justin kept her voice steady. "I'm not here for benefits, and I don't need to wait outside. I need to speak with the branch manager." Sarah, now visibly irritated, narrowed her eyes. "Do you have an appointment? Our manager is a very busy man. Not just anyone gets to speak to him." Justin didn't flinch. "No appointment, but I'll be seeing him today." Sarah raised an eyebrow, her gaze shifting toward her colleagues, unsure of how to respond. She hadn't expected someone like Justin. Sarah was taken aback by the authority with which someone who seemed so out of place in this setting made such a bold request. But Justin wasn't finished. "I'll leave for now," she said, standing up from the counter. But I'll be back tomorrow, and you'll know exactly who I am." With that, she turned and walked out of the bank, leaving behind a trail of murmurs and confused glances. The employees, now visibly uncomfortable, tried to suppress their laughter, dismissing Justin's words as an empty threat. What they didn't realize was that they had just been warned about something that would change everything. The next day, Justin arrived at the bank early, her steps deliberate but carrying the weight of someone on a mission. She had already expected the mocking smiles and whispers behind her back, but none of that mattered now. She was the new president of Jessica Branch Bank, a position that would challenge everything the employees thought they knew about power, privilege, and respect. As she approached the entrance, Justin took a deep breath. This wasn't just about her. It was about setting a new precedent. She was setting a new standard for everyone who entered those doors. The world she was stepping into was built on assumptions. Assumptions about what success looked like and who deserved to be in control. Inside the bank, it was quieter than usual, almost as if it could sense the shift that had occurred over the past 24 hours. The same employees who had mocked her just a day before were already at their posts, moving about, their eyes nervously flicking toward her as she walked through the doors. Sarah, the teller from yesterday, was the first to notice Justin's arrival. A tight, forced smile appeared on her lips, one that barely masked the discomfort in her eyes. The woman who had so easily dismissed Justin the day before was now struggling to maintain her composure. The power dynamic had shifted, and Sarah could feel it in the air. Justin walked past the rows of desks, her gaze focused ahead, ignoring the whispered comments from the staff. It didn't matter to her whether they understood her purpose or not. She wasn't there to fit into their expectations of what a leader should be. She didn't need to impress them with flashy clothes or polished speeches. Justin was there to show them something far more powerful, the kind of leadership that came from within, not from appearances. Without pausing, she walked toward the conference room. The staff exchanged confused glances as she passed, some trying to hide their smiles, unsure of what to make of her presence. In the conference room, Reynold, the branch manager, was already seated at the head of the table, reviewing paperwork. When the door opened and Justin walked in, he looked up, momentarily startled. "Justin," Reynolds said, his voice filled with hesitation. He hadn't expected her to show up so soon, let alone without any formal announcement. Justin didn't respond immediately. Instead, she walked to the head of the table where Reynolds sat and placed her bag on the chair next to his. She didn't ask for permission. She simply made herself at home. "Miss Cairo," Reynolds finally spoke, his tone strained. "I didn't expect you here today. It's not really proper procedure to just—" "No, it's not," Justin interrupted. She spoke gently but with authority. "You see, Mr. Reynolds, there's something more important than procedure today." Reynolds stared at her, his confusion deepening as his mind raced. He had been briefed about Justin's appointment, but nothing had prepared him for her directness or the quiet power that radiated from her. He was used to high-profile executives who arrived with entourages, tailored suits, and rehearsed speeches. Justin, by contrast, was unassuming, but there was a sharpness in her presence that he could no longer ignore. "I'll be honest," Reynolds began, his voice uncertain. "I didn't expect such a strong presence." "I thought you should take a seat," Justin said calmly, her voice unwavering. She didn't raise it, but the authority in her words was undeniable. Reynolds fell silent, unsure of what to do next. The door to the conference room opened, and the rest of the staff shuffled in, murmuring as they took their seats. Sarah entered last, her eyes wide with disbelief when she saw Justin sitting at the head of the table. It took a moment for the others to realize the gravity of the situation. The air was thick with tension, and the staff was unsure how to react. Then Reynolds cleared his throat and stood up, signaling for attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice more professional now, though still tinged with uncertainty. "This is Justin, our new president. She will be leading this branch from now on." The room fell into complete silence. The employees who had mocked her, laughed at her, and treated her like an insignificant customer just the day before were now staring at her in shock, struggling to process the revelation. Justin didn't wait for their surprise to fade. She leaned forward slightly, her gaze sweeping the room, her eyes steady and confident, without a trace of hesitation. "I walked into this bank yesterday," Justin began, her voice steady and clear. "Not as a leader, not as someone with a title, but as a simple customer. I didn't wear a suit, I didn't wear high heels. I wanted to see how you would treat someone who looks like me, a black woman who doesn't fit your image of power." She paused, allowing her words to resonate. Some employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding her gaze, while others stared at the floor, their faces reddening with embarrassment. "You mocked me, you ignored me, and you refused me service, simply because of how I looked." Justin's voice remained calm, but the weight of her words hung heavily in the room. "And that, I'm afraid, is not something we can allow to continue." Her eyes moved from one employee to another. "You've all heard the saying, 'Don't judge a book by its cover.' This is more than just a lesson in empathy," Justin continued, her voice steady and commanding. "This is a lesson in leadership, respect, and equality. From now on, no one here will be treated with anything less than fairness, no matter their appearance, background, or position." Sarah squirmed in her seat, recalling how she had looked down on Justin the day before, laughing with her colleagues and dismissing her with a wave of the hand. Now Justin's gaze was fixed on her, calm and unwavering. Sarah's face flushed with shame, and she lowered her eyes to the table, her embarrassment palpable. Justin's voice softened slightly, but the firmness remained. "This is a bank, yes, but it's also a community. We are here to serve everyone with dignity. I will not tolerate discrimination, and neither should any of you. If you cannot uphold these values, then perhaps this is not the place for you." She leaned back in her chair, her hands folded in front of her. "I'll be monitoring how things are done here very closely. If anyone believes that the way we've been doing business, where appearance and status determine worth, is the right way, then I suggest you reconsider your place here." The room remained silent, with the employees unsure of how to respond. Those who had once felt secure in their sense of superiority now realized their days of complacency were over. Justin had made her mark, and the era of privilege based on skin color, gender, and appearance was finished. Under her leadership, change was not just inevitable. It had already begun. As Justin's words hung in the air like a heavy silence, the employees sat still, their discomfort palpable. No one dared to meet her gaze directly, yet each one could feel the weight of her presence pressing down on them. The usual buzz of the office, once filled with idle chatter, now seemed distant and muted, as though the building itself had sensed the shift in the atmosphere. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. No one spoke, no one moved. The tension in the room was so thick it could almost be cut with a knife. Then Reynolds shifted in his seat. His face, once marked with uncertainty, now looked more resolute. He cleared his throat, his voice still a bit unsteady but trying to maintain authority. "Justin, I understand where you're coming from, but the culture here, it's been this way for years. People don't just change overnight." His words hung in the air, a fragile attempt to cling to the old ways. His tone was defensive. But there was something in Reynolds' eyes that made Justin pause. It wasn't just resistance she was facing. It was the stark reality of how deeply ingrained these attitudes were. Justin leaned forward, her gaze locking with Reynolds. "You're right," she said slowly, her voice calm but carrying the weight of what was to come. "It won't happen overnight, but change is happening now, whether you're ready for it or not." Her words weren't just a warning. They were a promise. In that moment, the air between them thickened again, this time with the undeniable force of inevitability. The employees shifted uncomfortably in their seats, exchanging glances, as if the realization had just dawned on them all at once. They had assumed that Justin's words, though powerful, would be like those of any other corporate leader. Grand declarations that fell short when it came to real change. But Justin was different. The calm determination in her eyes, the strength in her posture. Everything about her made it clear this wasn't just talk. She was serious. The silence was broken by Sarah, who had been visibly squirming in her seat. She was the first to speak, though her voice wavered with uncertainty. So, what happens now? Justin's gaze turned to Sarah. The woman who had ridiculed her just a day ago was now sitting before her, asking the question none of the others had the courage to ask. Justin studied her for a long moment, as if weighing her every word. "What happens now?" Justin began, her voice steady and unwavering. "Is that we start over. We create a new standard here. No more mockery, no more discrimination. Everyone, from the tellers to the branch manager, will be held accountable for their actions. I will not tolerate disrespect of any kind, whether it's based on skin color, gender, or appearance." A sharp intake of breath swept through the group, as if they all suddenly understood that the era of comfortable indifference had come to an end. Justin's gaze softened, but the firmness in her voice remained. "This is a chance for all of us to grow, to learn, and to make this bank a place where people don't just come for transactions. They come for respect, trust, and equality." Sarah looked down at the table, her fingers twisting nervously. She didn't speak again, but her body language spoke volumes. She was beginning to grasp the magnitude of what Justin was proposing, and the consequences of not embracing it were clear. Meanwhile, Reynolds stood up, hands clasped behind his back, a deep sigh escaping as he realized this was no longer just about following corporate protocols or maintaining peace. The real work was about to begin, and it would be harder than anything he had ever faced in his career. "Justin," he said, his voice no longer defensive but with a genuine effort to find common ground. "You're right. I can't pretend this isn't a problem. But can you really expect everyone to just adjust? This isn't going to be easy for some people." Justin met his gaze, her expression softening, though still resolute. "I'm not asking for instant change, Reynolds. I'm asking for effort, for the willingness to recognize that every person here, no matter their background, deserves to be treated with dignity. And if some can't do that, then they'll have to leave. It's as simple as that." The tension in the room was palpable. As her words echoed through the room, the staff remained silent, feeling the weight of her conviction. There was no turning back now. This was the moment that would shape their future at Jessica Branch Bank. For a brief moment, Reynolds' gaze faltered as he weighed the reality of what Justin had said. Finally, he nodded, albeit reluctantly. "All right, we'll start with the team. Meeting. We'll talk to everyone and explain what's expected. I can't promise everyone will change right away, but I'll make sure they understand that the old ways are over." Justin smiled, a small gesture, but one filled with the weight of someone who had fought for more than just policy. "Good. That's all I ask. This is a chance to rebuild, not just the branch, but the culture. But it's going to take all of us working together." There was a long pause, but this time it was filled with understanding. The tension hadn't completely gone, but it had shifted. The employees now knew that their world had changed irrevocably, that their attitudes were being challenged, and that they were being held accountable for their actions. As Justin had promised, a new era had begun. The sound of chairs scraping against the floor broke the silence as the employees slowly rose from their seats. Some seemed hesitant, others resigned, but all were aware that something had shifted in the air, something they could no longer ignore. The days of complacency were over. Justin stood, her expression resolute. She had made her point, but now the real work was about to begin. She didn't need applause or their approval. She needed them to understand that leadership wasn't about commanding respect. It was about earning it every day. As the team filed out of the conference room, there were no grand gestures or celebratory words, just quiet acknowledgement. And for Justin, That was enough. She had planted the seed. Now it was up to them to nurture it as she left the room. The staff left one by one, some still deep in thought, others avoiding eye contact. The weight of what had just occurred hung over the bank like a storm cloud. Yet there was an undeniable shift. Though uncertainty lingered, there was also a faint glimmer of possibility. The question was no longer whether things would change, but how and how quickly they would adapt. Justin walked down the quiet hall, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. She had thrown down the gauntlet, but now came the true test. Would her words spark real, lasting change? Or would the old ways reassert themselves over time? Her mind drifted back to the past 24 hours, recalling the disbelief on the faces of the employees when they realized who she was. They had treated her with disdain, mocking her, if because she dressed simply and lacked the polished appearance they expected from someone in her position, she was not worthy of respect. She had felt their eyes on her and heard the sharp whispers behind her back. Yet Justin was undeterred. She had known that change would come, but she hadn't anticipated how difficult and personal it would be. Still, Justin was no stranger to hard work. She had come this far, and there was no turning back now. As she reached her office, she paused for a moment to look at the door. The nameplate read, Justin Owens, Branch President. It seemed like a small, almost insignificant thing, but in that moment, it felt like a symbol of everything she had fought for. She had earned this position, not by favor or luck, but through the strength of her character and the belief that leadership was about more than just power. It was about respect, integrity, and the courage to stand up for what was right, no matter the cost. Sitting at her desk, she took a deep breath. Justin looked at Sarah for a moment, silently assessing the young woman standing in her doorway. There was a palpable tension in the air, but Justin didn't speak immediately. She let the silence hang for just a beat, allowing Sarah the space to make her move. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice tentative. I wanted to apologize, she said, her eyes still on the floor. For the way I treated you yesterday. I was wrong. Justin didn't rush to respond. Instead, she studied Sarah, understanding that this was more than an apology. It was a moment of self-realization for Sarah, a step toward understanding the impact of her actions. After a brief pause, Justin leaned back in her chair, her voice calm but firm. Apologies are a good start, Sarah. But change isn't just about saying the right words. It's about the actions that follow. Sarah nodded, lifting her eyes slightly. I know. I want to do better. I want to be part of the change. Justin could see the sincerity in her eyes, and it was a start. The journey had begun, Justin thought, not just for the bank, but for each of them individually. She leaned forward slightly, her expression softening. Then let's see it. I expect you to lead by example, Sarah. It's not just about learning from this moment. It's about making sure it doesn't happen again. Sarah nodded, her resolve growing. I will. Thank you for giving me the chance. As Sarah left, Justin took another deep breath, feeling a sense of quiet pride. The road ahead was long, but she was ready to walk it. Not just for herself, but for everyone who would come through those doors, no matter their background, their appearance, or their past. Change had already begun. Justin's voice softened, though her words remained firm. I know it's not easy to confront these things, but change doesn't happen just by acknowledging the problem. It happens when we choose to act, when we decide to do better every day. She paused, watching Sarah carefully. The truth is, we all have work to do. This is about more than just one incident. It's about creating a culture where we treat everyone with dignity, regardless of how they look, where they come from, or what they wear. Sarah nodded, her expression pained but resolute. I want to be part of that change, she said quietly. I know I have a lot to learn, but I'm willing to put in the effort. I won't let this happen again. Justin smiled, a small but genuine gesture. Good, that's a start. We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. I'm not expecting perfection, but I am expecting a commitment to growth. And it starts with you. Today. Sarah nodded again, this time more confidently. I understand. And I'm ready. Justin's gaze softened, the weight of the conversation beginning to ease. I appreciate your honesty, Sarah. Now let's focus on making sure this becomes more than just words. Let's make sure it's a change we can all be proud of. Sarah took a deep breath, a small but meaningful shift in her posture as she straightened. I won't let you down. As Sarah left, Justin allowed herself a moment of reflection. The room was still, but for the first time in what felt like a long while, it wasn't heavy with tension. There was hope now. Hope that change was not only possible but within reach. And that hope was something she'd fight for every single day. Justin smiled to herself as she read Reynolds' message. His words weren't filled with the same hesitation or resistance from earlier. There was a new tone in his message now, one of readiness. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. She quickly typed a response. We're all in this together. Tomorrow will be a step in the right direction. With that, Justin set her phone down and looked out the window again. The sunlight breaking through the clouds now seemed like a reflection of her own thoughts. Change wasn't just coming. It was already underway. The road ahead would be long, and there would be challenges. But she had already made a difference. One conversation, one small victory at a time. The real test would be in the days and weeks to come, as the true nature of change would reveal itself in the small, everyday actions of the staff. Justin knew it wouldn't be easy to break old habits, to undo the ingrained prejudices that had existed for so long. But with each person who acknowledged the need for change, the foundation of a new culture at Jessica Branch Bank was being laid. Her phone buzzed again, interrupting her thoughts. It was another message from Reynolds. Just to confirm, you'll be in the meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m.? Justin stood up, walking toward the window. She let out a quiet breath before typing her reply. Yes, I'll be there. She looked out over the city, seeing the familiar sights, but for the first time in a while, everything felt different. She had set the tone for change, and now it was time for the entire team to take their first steps together. Justin felt a quiet satisfaction knowing that, despite the challenges ahead, she was no longer standing alone. Justin smiled, a sense of quiet triumph rising within her. She didn't need any more validation than that. She had set the course, and now it was up to everyone else to see it through. As the day drew to a close and the lights in the office flickered off one by one, Justin felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would be the beginning of something new, something better. The work ahead would be difficult, but it was a challenge she was ready for. She stood, took one last look at her office, and walked out, knowing that the first steps toward a fairer, more respectful bank had already been taken. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a comment below and subscribe the channel for more amazing stories that will inspire you.